Happy Tuesday, everybody. Jim Benton from Chorus with the Daily Briefing. And today I am with Lauren Bailey, the founder and president of Factor 8. Hey, Lauren, how are you?
Hey, I'm really good. Thank you for having me. What a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, likewise. And by the way, I forgot to mention you're also the founder of Girls Club,
which would not be possible without our title sponsor, Chorus.
Well, we're thrilled to participate. I'm curious, by the way, just speaking of Girls Club, What was the inspiration? How did that come about a couple years ago?
I was a young female sales manager years ago, and I was the only one, right? I was the only skirt at the table, and it was lonely. I didn't know what I was doing. I shouldn't have been promoted into the position. I was way overemployed, and I think that pain is fresh. And now that I have a chance to speak to up and coming salespeople and leaders, I get asked all the time, why aren't there more women in sales management? And I just got sick of talking about it. There's a million reasons why, but I think that I can do something about it is what I thought. So we built Girls Club to help teach the skills and the confidence so that more women in sales would raise their hand and go for the next level. And we built a community out of it, which is wonderful because I think a lot of women have to go outside their company walls to find colleagues and role models that are also women in sales and leaders of sales.
Lauren, what's been the biggest pleasant surprise after doing that for several years?
Oh, it's an easy one. How quickly these women take off. I will tell you that it is a bit like pulling teeth to get women to even raise their hand to come into the program, right? And to ask for funding in their company and to ask for management and leadership support and to go have the conversation that says, I think I want to be in management. Once they do, it's like a magic button. You hit the encouragement button and they take off like freaking rockets. These are superstar women. They're all at the top of the sales game, but they just were dipping their toe in management, and it's been wildly successful. We've got like a 70 or 80% promotion rate, and that's while they're in the 6-month program.
I love that. I think all of us chasing passions and just helping others is such a critical thing. So it's awesome to see you doing that. Glad we get a chance to support you on this.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's making a difference out there in the world. And they're just it's like popping up all over the place. They light up and then just straight up into the stratosphere, which is great, right? Because as we build better leaders, we build better sellers and better organizations.
Leadership is everything, and that's a big part of the topic we're going to jump into today. So I'm thrilled to get your perspective on a couple of the different data points we're seeing. One that we shared, we've been sharing this opening data point around the buying community. We're seeing such a significant increase in leadership joining the sales calls. Even this week alone, for May 18th, huge spike. And the secondary metric of this that is new for this week is that on the CFO side, so specifically looking at CFOs, look at this change, 91% increase since the baseline pre-COVID, pre-March. So
you think there's some sort of trend happening right now, right? You think something's going on that's restricting spending.
My goodness. They're in there. So you're right. The world has changed. I'm curious, what are you seeing in terms of coaching teams to work through these changes?
It's very different, isn't it?
It's
very different. I think that we're used to having our youngest sellers, right, ask a couple specific questions in their script, book a meeting. These people talk for 5 minutes, do their standard demo, and that's not going to work right now from the beginning all the way to the end, right? So even if we're getting through that demo now, here we are in another level where we have more executive presence on the calls, and anything you've used before is not going to work to close that deal, is it?
No, I think it's, what do we think the CFOs want out of these calls? What would make for a successful, outcome for the CFOs?
Well, I'll tell you what it's not first, right? It's not your standard pitch. It's not a listing of your features and benefits, and it sure as hell isn't the demo. I would venture a guess that the most successful CFO calls never have a screen share. They're never actually jumping in. You're not selling the tool anymore. You're selling the decision. You're selling the outcome. You're selling the future, right?
Yeah.
Right. So you're a very successful C-level executive, Jim, right? You're going to walk into that meeting wanting to see a demo or having a few questions of your own.
Well, you are talking to someone that put ClearSlide together many years ago. We were very visual. But to your point, I think that they're not looking for a scripted, here's how the software works, or here's a canned kind of deck. They're looking for something very thoughtful. I am a fan of visuals if it's Canvas, if it's something to articulate a point, such as an ROI calculator that was custom built for a CFO.
Right, my reporting, right? What's the trend reporting that I can pull out of this that's going to be important to me as the CFO? What am I going to look at, right? Or even data on ROI from past customers, all of that critical. But it's not my features and benefits demo, is it?
I think that's what I'm hearing from you, Lauren. It's super interesting. If you just pull the materials that we use for the classic buyer, so if you're selling to a CMO or a CRO, it isn't necessarily as relevant for the CFO. It isn't built for them. And that's what I'm hearing from you is don't show the wrong materials to the wrong executive.
Yeah. I want to know as a CFO, why am I buying this? But even more importantly, why am I buying this now? Right? Why is it the right investment during this crazy time of restricted spending? So it's not just the return on the investment, it's really the speed, I think, to that return.
I think that's right. Everyone has their ROI. Everyone can show that this will pay back. But the key is it business essential? Does this have to happen now? Is that ROI, can you feel it? Can you truly, pencil that in and have that math work when you run the numbers? And I think it's just critical to say this is something more important than the next thing I'm going to buy.
And that's what it is, right? You're jockeying for a very limited spend. And it's not, like we said, it's not the why, it's the why right now. And some of that has to do with risk.
Yeah.
Right, Jim, you were talking about risk mitigation. And that's truly what it is, right? Is this going to save me from something else? Is this going to help me pull my company out? Is this going to help me pivot in a different direction? Is it going to help bring in more sales or revenue? Is it going to reduce spend?
Yeah.
Right? We have to think about the crisis that so many companies are in right now. We did an executive briefing across our Friends of Factor 8 last week, and we started with a quick poll. 100% of our people, sales are down. So many companies have found a pivot, right? We found a new market. We found a new way to sell. We found new talk tracks, new buyers, et cetera. But that's helping us break even at best.
If a CFO showed up on your call today, Lauren, what opening questions would you ask? How would you make sure that's going to be a successful interaction?
Oh, that's good. That's really good. Frankly, I would flip it around, Jim, right? A CFO has questions they want answered. So instead of trying to control that call and lead the narrative, I think I would just abruptly stop and ask, right? Jim, you're here to check this out. You have a couple specific questions in mind. Let's get those on the table right now and spend the rest of the time answering them.
Yeah. I love it. It's interesting. I mean, the more I think about our own CFO showing up, that urgency right now, showing sort of the why this is something that needs to be acted on right now versus not something that could be wait 2 to 3 months on, I think is critical for everybody to be able to answer that question.
It is critical. And then I think how we answer those questions is critical as well, right? Very, very little tolerance for the pitch. I love selling to sales leaders because they love the pitch, right? Like we get done selling at each other and then we coach each other on how we did. But a CFO has got absolutely no tolerance for that. So let's make sure that we answer the question very directly, very honestly, and then give the backup. Like, tell me the end of the story, summarize it for me, hit me between the eyes, maybe even challenge me a little bit. Now come backwards and support your points. But they're not going to go on the long, winding journey with you, if that makes sense.
Lauren, the other data point there is that there's a 100% increase in just leaders in general joining these calls.
I love that.
What type of coaching would you be giving to the teams you're working with now that we're seeing such an increase in leadership, and how does it change these interactions?
Yeah. Well, what's fascinating is that your data shows that the leaders are joining on both sides, right? So the leaders are with their sellers, and then there's more leaders joining on the buyer side as well.
Yep.
So the first thing, honestly, that springs to my mind is if you're joining your sellers on a call, please resist the temptation to jump in and take over. Like, I think that is the number one hardest thing when new managers come on board, right? Is not ripping the headset off of their reps and taking over calls. It's what makes us lousy coaches, right? Because it's be like me. I've been doing it 20 years. I'm a superstar, and it's an art, not a science. I can do it. I can't teach it. And so we take over. And I think that makes it tough. And it's great to have that presence, right? The number of buyers is up. We need to join with an equal number of sellers and have some of the weight at the table. All right. But your real question, Jim, was how do we sell to the executives on the other end of the phone? Is that right?
I think so. I think your data point is fantastic, which is as our leaders join the calls, it does impact it. We need to give room for our sales professionals that own these relationships to continue to do that. We need to grow and train them. But as we now see more executives joining, why is that? And what can we do to make sure that these are really successful interactions?
Yeah. I think that the executives are joining the calls for a couple key reasons, right? One, we do have restricted spending. Two,
Yep.
a lot of people are making the strategic pivots. I'm looking at technology I never looked at before because I'm trying to enter a new market, right? It's a more strategic level of a sale. And I think the third reason, frankly, is that we've got the time. Right? People are coming to more meetings. They're showing up. They're attending webinars. I'm not stuck in the kind of BS day-to-day 12 other meetings that I'm being pulled into. And we all have this hyper focus on our people and morale. And we're looking at it for a horrible reason, but we're looking at it. And I love that. It's a good thing. All right. So how do we make sure the calls are successful? I think we've got to take it up a level. Right? I think that we're used to kind of selling lower and we've taught reps or given them scripts for that, ask a question, show a feature, talk a benefit, ask 3 questions, pitch, that sort of thing. And the conversations have changed. So we've got to ask more strategic level questions. We have to ask a little bit about, well, we have to lead with some empathy, obviously, right? And what's happening, but what's happening in business and what that means for them, right? Why they're looking at these different tools. Yeah. What are the most important things? How are they being measured? How are they measuring success right now? How will this solution play into, right, their strategy in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months?
I will say, I think it highlights one other key point, which is if the directors and execs are joining the calls, it means they're reviewing the proposals. It means that they're involved in the entire process. And, the use of video in proposals and other mechanisms, whatever we're doing, it's got to spread beyond these calls. It's got to spread beyond an inbox. Are you seeing use of unique tools out there to sort of use video in the proposal process right now?
Oh, I love the fact that video's up. Isn't that fantastic?
Absolutely.
And I love how it's rehumanized people, right? It's not just the CNN anchor in his boxer shorts. Like everybody's got naked kids photo bombing in the background or video bombing in the background. Yeah, I see a lot more video, absolutely. Screen shares. In fact, people are now, the pendulum swung so far, it's like, let's get off video a little bit. Your sellers are doing it back to back to back to back. I love the fact I've seen more in conversation intelligence, like Chorus, right? When I used to be able to just kind of walk down the aisles and listen to calls, and I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? I have to be purposeful about it. I have to listen and use my recordings. Managers have been handcuffed without recordings for far too long. And now they're using them and it's making a massive difference.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that. I mean, this is the data point looking at coaching specifically, and managers are investing such significantly more time coaching their reps. And if you look at March 16th, that was the dip, when we just all started to work from home. So I think
they're figuring out technology right then, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They were figuring out everything else about keeping their teams afloat.
And they're reformatting their bathroom to be a background.
Hey, those are very important pieces. But yeah, they've been slowly been able to invest more time. Now they're coaching more than they were than pre the COVID era.
Yes.
Yes. And I know that a big part of your passion and your firm is around coaching. What's going on right now on the coaching side?
I will tell you that we train thousands of managers every year, right? And this is all about what Girls Club is about as well. And the vast majority of successful leaders get into leadership from sales because they love to develop people. Yeah. That's it. That's the magic button. If you're going for the bucks, you're going to be sorely disappointed very, very quickly, right? If you're going for the power, you realize, wait a minute, I had more freedom and power when I was a rep. So you get into it and you stay into it because you love developing people. Problem is, that is the one thing that's easiest to slip on your to-do list, right? I've got a hot customer issue. I've got a big deal to close. somebody's asking for a report. I've got to be in 7 company meetings a week. So coaching just gradually falls off the calendar, and then it becomes I'll get to it when I can kind of activity, which is sad, right? That's why we got into it in the first place. And it's also a tough thing to do, right? There's a lot of young managers who struggle with the confidence to get out there and do it. right? Sure, there's the young kids on my team and I can teach them everything back in the great old days when, I was a high school football star. It feels like that. But how am I going to coach these other people? Like, we haven't taught them what to coach or how to coach. And they struggle with that. And when you feel that way about something, you don't prioritize it, right? You go do what you're great at. You go do what you know you can knock out of the park. We kind of have to now, don't we?
Yeah.
Right? So there's been this huge focus on not just keeping our people okay, which I love, right? It's just people are focused on their teams and keeping them happy and healthy and morale, and the caring, if you will, is up. There's a stat. I don't think it's going to make it on a Chorus slide. Caring up 76%.
Yeah.
But they also have the time. So it's right. I'm being pulled out of everything else. I don't have all of the kind of BS junk that fills up our calendars. And my number one focus is on our people and getting anything to close I can. They're on calls and they're coaching.
I think it's right. I mean, if you're not coaching right now, then you have zero connection to your team. I mean, you can't walk the halls, you can't feel the energy, you can't see the calls. And what I'm excited about is that transition of walking the halls and feeling the energy, that's pretty surface. It doesn't scale. And any of us that have grown large teams realizes once you're on multi-floors or multi-offices, it doesn't work. And so the ability to really deeply inspect and understand what good coaching looks like, what good calls look like. I'm thrilled that we're seeing a true 10X in how people are coaching right now.
Oh, dear God, yes, absolutely. I love the fact that you say that as a leader, right? When you're 3 floors up, you don't get that feeling anymore. And it's all too often that our leaders aren't hearing the voice of the customer, right? So by listening to recordings, 5 or 6 a week, and start every morning with listening to a call recording, you're going to get the voice of the customer. You're going to cry a little bit when you listen to the execution of your strategy, let's be honest. But that's what helps us make coaching more important. I love when leaders get involved in the coaching as well. So the manager coaches the rep, then the leader coaches the manager. Because that's where it breaks down, right? We're missing that.
I think so. It's about looking at the same game film, understanding the same, at scale, looking at what are the topics, what's happening, and then using judgments to look at how we improve and using the system to drive those improvements across the team.
I think it's critical. We've been using call recording at Factor 8 since you had to use 2 fingers, right, to hit play and record, to actually record calls. It's critical to get buy-in from your reps to listen to calls. It's also critical to help them know when to apply skills, right? Like if you look at ramp time, there's always going to be a ramp, even when you hire somebody experienced, even when you hire them from the same industry. Yeah. Why do you have the ramp? Because the game hasn't slowed down for them yet, right? You think about the color commentator talking about a football quarterback, right? Oh, wow, the game's really slowed down for him, Jim. He's seeing the openings.
Yeah.
If you ask a new rep how a call went in their first 3 months, they can't even answer you. It's like they're being rushed, right? It's like, I don't even know what I said or when I said it. But when you can use the game tape, you can slow it down. You pause, right? What's the customer thinking? What should you say next? Exactly. Right? It's not that they don't know, here's the questions I should ask. They have the list in front of them. It's that they don't know when to use them. So that's the number one reason I love call recording. And I think that what's also cool that's happening now with the coaching is that the number one mistake we make is that we coach the deal and not the rep. Right? Like you said, if you really want to get deep into the conversations, like that's what's scalable is when you're working with people and developing their skills, not giving them a script and a tool and saying good luck and then looking at the outcome data. So when managers really get into it, they realize that one-on-one time in call coaching is their chance to connect with the person and to develop the person. Unfortunately, we're usually coaching the deal, right? Instead of the person to develop. And I think that that's what we're getting better at right now.
I think the scale, what I've always been excited about is that one coaching moment that's about the person, about the experience they create, will now impact every interaction they have or could interact.
When it's good, when it's a good interaction.
It's a good coaching moment, it could interact all the future calls they have. Whereas a deal moment impacts that deal. And I think that's what we're looking for is how do we create these brilliant experiences for customers? And you do it by finding individual moments that can then be scaled and multiplied out.
100%. And I think one of the easy tactical things you can do to make sure that happen is let your reps pick the calls. that you coach, right? Call coaching isn't about catching them doing something wrong. It's about catching them doing something right.
Yeah.
And people will, you're going to get a 10x difference in behavior change when you use a past call, frankly, because listen, you can't coach the deal then. That's my trick, because I get all hung up and, you missed it. And then you focus on what they're doing well, right? And how to scale that. You let them pick the one thing they want to work on and one thing only, right? So if the manager decides what it is, the rep may or may not even remember what it's supposed to be. So the rule of thumb is, if you let the rep choose, you can't lose.
I love it. Well, Lauren, any final advice for go-to-market leaders out there right now that are looking to keep their teams motivated and moving forward?
It's time to start selling again. That's it. I think that we spent a lot of time pressing pause. I think that we did a great job of connecting with humans and working with empathy.
Yep.
Right. But it's time. We're getting back to work. If your reps have done really well over the last 2 months, they've had deeper conversations with more people. They have a new pipeline built, and it's probably the best qualified, right, most informed pipeline that you've ever had. So the key right now is not just answering why you need to buy, it's why you need to buy right now.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's where we need to focus.
Lauren, thank you so much. Appreciate you joining today, kicking off our Tuesday with everybody, and appreciate the work you're doing at the Girls Club, and so thrilled we can support you on that.
I couldn't be more grateful. Thank you on behalf of the thousands of women who are getting an opportunity to really up-level their career. We couldn't do it without Chorus, and I appreciate you.
Likewise. Well, thanks, Lauren. We'll see you around. Cheers.
Pleasure.
All right, bye.